The fluorescent lights hummed above him like dying insects. He didn't remember walking in. That was the first thing wrong. One moment he had been in the forest, bark scraping his palms, wind threading through the pines. The next, nothing. A white corridor. Walls the color of old teeth. Carpet the color of a bruise that had almost healed, but not quite. He still held the stick. That was the second thing wrong. The stick was real. Rough-hewn, stripped of its bark in places where his hands had worked it over years of walking. It was the most real thing in this place. And so he held it tighter, and he walked. The corridor stretched ahead of him without end. Not figuratively, literally. He walked for what felt like 40 minutes, and the end of the corridor did not get closer. The fluorescent tubes above him ticked and buzzed, and one of them, 3 panels ahead, flickered in a rhythm that almost resembled language. He stopped beneath it and looked up. The flicker went still. He walked on, and it resumed behind him. He did not look back. The walls were the color of old lemons, not yellow. That would have been cheerful, or at least honest. This was the color of something that had once been white and had absorbed years of cigarette smoke and institutional despair and been repainted once, badly with a yellow that had faded before it was even dry. It was the color of a place that existed to be forgotten. His feet were bare. He noticed this now. The carpet under him was a low industrial pile, the kind you find in office buildings that haven't been renovated since 1987, and it was slightly damp, not wet, damp. The way a towel is damp 2 days after you used it and left it on the floor. There was a smell to match mildew and something beneath the mildew, something older, something animal. He was not afraid yet. That was the strangest part. He should have been afraid. A man with long hair matted against his shoulders, a beard that had grown through seasons, wearing the remnants of clothing that had once been trousers and were now closer to wrappings. This man should have been afraid of a corridor with no end. But fear requires a frame of reference. Fear requires the concept of something worse. And he had been in the forest for so long that his frame of reference had collapsed entirely. He had forgotten what normal was. So this was simply different. Fluorescent and damp and wrong, but different. He kept walking. The first door appeared without announcement. It was set into the right-hand wall, flush with the yellow surface, and if not for the faint seam around its edges and the small silver handle, the kind of the handle you find on a filing cabinet, he might have walked past it entirely. He stopped. He looked at it for a long time. His hand, the one not holding the stick, reached out and touched the surface of the door. It was warm. Not room temperature. Warm. Body temperature. Like pressing your palm against someone's back while they sleep. He pulled his hand away. He did not open the door. He walked on. The second door came 40 paces later. Left-hand wall. Same dimensions, same silver handle. He did not stop this time. But as he passed, he heard something from the other side. Not a sound exactly. More like the memory of a sound. The ghost of a child laughing, played backwards at 1/4 speed. His spine moved in a way spines are not supposed to move. He kept walking. The third door was open. Not ajar, not cracked. Open, swung fully inward, revealing a room that should not have fit inside the wall it was set into. The room was enormous. It was the same room. He knew this immediately, the way you know things in a fever dream, with absolute certainty and no justification. The room was the same room he was standing in. The same yellow walls, the same humming lights, the same damp carpet. but it was larger, much larger. The ceiling was 30 feet up at least, and the lights up there were smaller, farther away, and several of them were dead, leaving patches of dark that seemed to absorb the light around their edges rather than simply not produce their own. He stood in the doorway and looked in. In the center of the room was a chair. Office chair. Black mesh back, wheel base. The kind of chair that costs $300 in a catalog and squeaks on the left side when you turn. It was facing away from him. He could see the back of it, the top of the mesh, and he could almost see, the suggestion of a shoulder above the right armrest. A shape. Something sitting. He took one step into the room. The door swung shut behind him. Silently. He did not hear it latch. He turned, and it was wall. Just wall. Smooth and yellow and without seam, without handle, without any indication that it had ever been anything else. He turned back to the chair. The shoulder was gone. The chair was empty. It had always been empty. He crossed the room. His stick made no sound on the carpet. His feet made no sound on the carpet. The lights above made their sound. Tick, hum, tick. And that was the only sound in the world. He reached the chair and put his hand on the back of it, and it spun, slowly, one full rotation, and came to rest facing him. There was a sticky note on the seat. Yellow. Of course, yellow. Written on it in a handwriting that was not quite human. The letters were correct. The words were legible, but the pressure of the pen had been wrong, too even, too controlled. The way a person writes when they are thinking very hard about how a person is supposed to write. You have been here before. He read it 3 times. He turned it over. The back was blank. He put it in what remained of his pocket and he looked for another door, and there was one, across the room. And he walked to it and it opened and he was back in the corridor. The same corridor. He looked left and he looked right, and both directions were identical. The same vanishing point. The same lights. The same wall color. The same carpet stain 8 feet to his left that might have been rust and might have been something else. And either way had been there long enough to become part of the architecture. He had no memory of which direction he had come from. He chose right. He walked. Time passed. Here is the thing about the backrooms that no one tells you, because no one who has been in them long enough to understand has ever made it back to tell you. Time does not pass at a consistent rate. This is not a metaphor about boredom or disorientation. It is a literal structural feature of the place. He walked for what his body told him was 3 hours. His calves told him, his lower back told him, his dry mouth told him. And then he turned a corner and the shadows suggested morning. Not that there were windows, not that there was sky, but the quality of the fluorescent light shifted slightly, became a shade cooler, the way light becomes in early hours, and his body said, morning, and so morning it was. Except it wasn't morning because there was no morning here. There was only corridor and door and carpet and hum. He found water on the floor. Not a puddle. A thin film, a glaze. The kind of moisture that accumulates in a basement over years. He got down on his knees and he looked at it. His reflection looked back at him, and his reflection looked wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Not distorted. Not monstrous. Just wrong in the way a photograph of yourself looks wrong. Like the proportions are slightly off. Like the face is yours, but assembled in a subtly incorrect order. He stared at his reflection, and his reflection did not move when he moved. It was still for 3 full seconds before it caught up. And when it did, it blinked once, and he had not blinked. He stood up. He kept walking. The 4th door, the 5th, the 6th. He opened none of them. He was developing a sense for doors now, the way a person who has been lost at sea develops a sense for weather. He could feel the wrong ones, the ones with warmth behind them, the ones with that sub-auditory wrongness, the ones that seemed to lean toward him as he passed, eager. He avoided those. He watched for doors that felt like nothing. Those were the ones that might go somewhere. On what his body called the second day, he found the cafeteria. He smelled it before he saw it. Not food, not exactly, but the ghost of food, the olfactory memory of 1,000 institutional lunches, of canned soup and white bread, and something fried in oil that had been used too many times. The corridor opened without warning into a room the size of an airplane hangar. Round tables, bolted to the floor, with attached plastic seats in orange and brown. A serving counter along the far wall with sneeze guards and steam trays, all empty, all gleaming under the lights as though they had just been cleaned. Though the dust on the tables suggested no one had been here in years, possibly ever. He walked to the serving counter and looked at the empty trays. There was something in the last one. He almost missed it. A single serving. A bowl covered in plastic wrap. The kind of institutional bowl that holds soup or oatmeal or whatever the menu decided. He picked it up. The plastic wrap was sealed perfectly. Beneath it was oatmeal, gray cooling, textured with that particular gumminess of cafeteria oatmeal that has been sitting in a steam tray for 2 hours too long. He was very hungry. He pulled back the plastic wrap and he ate it with his hands, and it tasted like oatmeal and nothing else. And he hated himself for how grateful he was. There was another sticky note at the bottom of the bowl. "You have not eaten in 4 days." He looked at the note and he thought about that. 4 days. His body said 2. The note said 4. He decided to believe his body. Then he thought about how the note had known he would eat the oatmeal. How it had known to put itself at the bottom of that bowl. He thought about that for a while, and then he put it in his pocket with the first note. And he stood up from the plastic seat and he found the exit on the far wall. And he went back to the corridor. On what his body called the third day, he began to hear the other one. Not footsteps. Footsteps would have been too simple, too honest. What he heard was the suggestion of footsteps, the displacement of air that might result from footsteps, a change in the acoustic texture of the corridor that could, if he was charitable, be attributed to another person walking somewhere in this system of corridors, walking in a direction that was never quite the same as his, never quite toward him, never quite away. He called out. His voice was swallowed immediately, not echoed, swallowed. The walls ate it. The carpet ate it. The fluorescent hum consumed it. He was not sure any sound had come out at all. He cleared his throat and tried again. Hello. One word. It vanished. He tried louder. Same result. He gave up on words and simply listened, and the suggestion of the other continued. Always at the edge of his perception. Always just around the next corner. Except when he turned the corner, it was just corridor. On the 4th day, his body's 4th day, he found the room with the mirrors. He should not have opened that door. He knew it was a wrong door. He had felt it from 10 feet away, the warmth, the almost sound. But he had been walking for 4 days, and he was losing his ability to care about the signals. He opened it. The room was smaller than he expected, maybe 15 feet square, and every surface, floor, ceiling, all 4 walls, was mirrored. He stood in the center and looked at the infinite regression of himself, the copies stretching back into mathematical infinity, getting smaller and darker and more distant, and he watched them and they watched him. and for a long moment, everything was still. Then the second furthest reflection waved. Not the furthest. The furthest just got swallowed by distance and dark. Not his immediate reflection. That one moved when he moved, perfectly synchronized. The second furthest one. The third copy of himself, standing in the third room inside the mirror. It raised its hand and it waved at him, slowly, the way you wave at someone you recognize across a parking lot. A friendly wave. A wave that said, "I know you." A wave that said, "I've been waiting." He backed out of the room. He shut the door. He stood in the corridor for a very long time before his legs remembered how to walk. The notes had been accumulating. He found them now without bowls, without chairs. They appeared on the floor, on the walls, pressed flat against the carpet as if they had always been there, as if the corridor had grown them overnight like some yellow paper fungus. He collected them. He read them in order. You are walking in a circle. You have always been walking in a circle. The circle is not spatial. You came in through a door. The door is still there. You cannot see it because you are looking for it. Stop looking for it. He stopped looking for it. He walked. He thought about the forest. He thought about bark and wind and the particular quality of light through pine trees in late afternoon. That amber-green combination, warm and cool simultaneously. The light that makes everything look like a memory even while you're standing in it. He thought about this and his feet moved and the corridor went past him. And he did not look at the doors, and he did not collect any more notes, and he did not listen for the other. He thought about a morning, years ago, before the forest, before whatever had happened before the forest. A morning with blue sky and coffee and a window. Ordinary things, the kind of things that accumulate into a life without announcing themselves. He thought about the weight of a coffee mug. He thought about the sound of wind in a city, different from wind in a forest, cleaner and meaner. He walked and he thought. He turned a corner. There was a door that felt like nothing. He stopped. He stood in front of it. It was identical to every other door. Same dimensions, same silver handle, same flush mounting. But it felt like nothing. No warmth, no almost sound, no leaning. It was simply a door, inert, patient. The way a real door is patient. The way a door in a house is patient. Not waiting to be opened, just available if you choose. He put his hand on the handle. Behind him, somewhere in the corridor, the suggestion of footsteps resolved suddenly into actual footsteps. Clear, real, close. He turned. The corridor was empty. He turned back and opened the door. On the other side was forest. Not the exact forest, not his forest, but a forest. Pines and soil and the late afternoon light that makes everything look like a memory. The air came through the doorway and hit him, and it smelled of bark and cold and time. He stepped through. He was standing on a hillside. He could hear wind, actual wind, honest wind, wind that moved things and meant something. He took 3 steps onto the pine needles and turned to look back. The door was a door in a tree, set into the bark of a very old pine, a regular door with a silver handle. And already the bark was closing slowly around its edges, reclaiming it. He watched until the door disappeared entirely, and there was nothing but tree. He looked down at his hand. He was still holding the stick. In his pocket, the sticky notes. He took them out and read them one more time, all of them in order, standing on the hillside in the amber-green light. Then he read the last one, the one at the bottom of the stack, the one he had not collected. the one that had simply been in his pocket when he reached in, as though it had always been there, as though it had made the journey with him from the beginning. It said, "You will forget this in 3 days. That is the mercy." He folded the notes. He put them back in his pocket. He walked down the hillside into the trees, and the light moved around him. And somewhere behind him, in the tree that was just a tree now, the fluorescent hum went on and on and on. There is a theory among the few people who study these things seriously that the backrooms are not a place. That place is the wrong category entirely. They argue it is closer to a condition, something that certain minds brush against in moments of profound disorientation, something that has always been adjacent to every room you have ever stood in, separated from you by a membrane so thin that in the wrong light, at the wrong angle, with the wrong kind of absence of mind, you can fall through it. They argue that the sticky notes are not written by anything, that the cafeteria does not serve anyone, that the mirrors do not show anything that isn't already there. They argue that it is simply what remains when meaning is subtracted from space. They write papers about it. They reference each other's papers. They have conferences. They sleep fine at night. They have never noticed, none of them, that their office walls are the color of old lemons,